In the first chapter of Pirkei Avos, Ethics of the Fathers, in the 6th Mishnah, the Mishnah says the following: Rabbi Zushe ben Prachia, who was the head of Sanhedrin, the Sanhedrin which was the highest court, says, Teidones kol adam lekaf zchus. One should always judge any person favorably. Beautiful teaching, beautiful, essential concept in Judaism, to respect and to be favorable, to be positive towards another person. Always give them the benefit of the doubt. But the Rebbe points out there is more than just this teaching over here. One has to look as to the person who says it and why he says that. So the person who says it is Rabbi Zushe ben Prachia. The Gemara in Sanhedrin, page 107, the Gemara relates the following story. Rabbi Zushe ben Prachia lived in the time of the Second Temple during the rule of King Yanai. Yanai was from the Hashmonaim dynasty, who unfortunately, the Hashmonaim dynasty eventually turned away from authoritative, traditional Judaism. At that time, there was a huge, raging battle between the Perushim and the Tzedukim, the Pharisees and the Sadducees. The Perushim were those who accepted and followed authentic Judaism the way it was transmitted from Moshe Rabbeinu, Moshe Kibel Torah Misinai, Umesara Yeshua, and so on, the traditional Judaism as was known. But the Tzedukim, the Sadducees, they decided to interpret the Torah literally. A little example, we know that regarding Shabbat, what it says, Torah Lo Tavaru Eish B'chol Mashvotechem, you shouldn't light any fire. It means that you should not light on Shabbat any fire. The Sadducee says, no, on Shabbat you're not supposed to have any fire whatsoever. And therefore on Shabbat, they wouldn't need anything warm, even if it was warm before Shabbat. Says we have today cholent as an example. They would sit in the dark, and unfortunately, yes, indeed, their life was completely dark. But it was a raging battle, and King Yanai, unfortunately, sided with the Sadducees, with the Tzedukim, to the point that he mistreated and came to a point that Rabbi Zushe ben Prachia, the rabbis, the leaders of the authentic Judaism, had to flee, and including Rabbi Zushe ben Prachia, who fled to Egypt. Eventually, Yanai's wife, King Shlomit Alexandra, she prevailed over her husband to stop being so brutal against the rabbis. And they came back. Rabbi Zushe ben Prachia is now traveling back with his faithful students who didn't leave his side since the first moment, going into exile, being with him in exile, coming back from exile, and they're traveling back to Israel. They're stopping in an inn, receiving beautifully by a proper hostess. And at one point, Rabbi Zushe ben Prachia complimented and said, what a beautiful inn this is. The student, obviously misunderstanding, and made a very inappropriate statement and said, how can you say this is a beautiful inn? Look how ugly she is. Rabbi Zushe ben Prachia was taken back by this inappropriate statement. He wasn't referring to the woman, obviously. And how can you be so insulting to a married woman to say how ugly she is? And he banned him from being next to him. He banned him from his studies. He completely rejected him and would not allow him to be next to him, come to his classes completely. Seeing that all with the efforts that he made are useless, he left and he started teaching his own interpretations of the Torah. He reformed the Torah and created a new religion called Christianity. When Rabbi Zushe ben Prachia saw this, he went back to him and he begged him, please return, you're forgiven. But to him it was too late. Especially since the halacha says that somebody who deters Jewish people from learning Torah, he averts people away from Judaism, is an individual who deserves that penalty. So he figured there is no place for him left in Judaism, and he continued with his teachings. Now, who was this individual? We never knew. And the reason we never knew, because there was censor over the printing of the Talmud. So the name was never mentioned. But about 100 years ago, when they found old manuscripts, and there was no censor over the Talmud, it was revealed who it was, and there was none other than, as the Gemara calls him, the Yeshu HaNatzri. JC, as he's called. So the reason for this new religion, according to what the Talmud says over here, is because Rabbi Zushe ben Prachi was so harsh with him and would not forgive him. So the Rebbe says, this is why Rabbi Zushe ben Prachi says you should always judge everyone favorably. But on a positive note, the Rambam says something interesting. Why did God allow this tremendous development of Christianity and other religions? And the Rambam says, to prepare humanity for the coming of Mashiach.